On a rainy afternoon, a broke waitress gave away her only pair of shoes to a homeless child, never knowing that the man sitting quietly in the corner booth was the CEO of the world's biggest shoe brand, and her life was about to be turned upside down. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Olivia Matthews, a 23-year-old waitress, spent most of her days at a small local diner tucked away on a quiet street corner. The diner wasn't much. Faded booths, chipped counter stools, and a neon sign that flickered every time it rained. But it was Olivia's refuge, a place where she worked tirelessly to make ends meet. Her life was a constant hustle. She worked long hours, often with barely enough time to catch her breath between shifts. Her life wasn't glamorous. Olivia lived in a small, modest apartment with her younger brother, Ethan, who had special needs. He relied on her, and Olivia had made a promise to herself that she would do whatever it took to make sure he had the best life she could provide. She worked hard to put food on the table, pay the bills, and most importantly, make sure Ethan had everything he needed for school. Yet despite her struggles, Olivia was known for her kindness. It was something that defined her. Even when life felt overwhelming, she never turned away from helping others. Olivia's shoes were her only pair, worn thin after months of use. They were scuffed at the toes, their soles barely hanging on, but she cherished them. Those shoes symbolized all the sacrifices she had made, all the little pieces of her life she had given away to make sure Ethan had enough. That rainy afternoon, when Olivia was wiping down the tables at the diner, she didn't expect anything to change. The rain had started to pour heavily outside, the sidewalk outside turning into a series of puddles, the gray afternoon sky casting a dreary light over everything. She looked at the clock, counting down the minutes until her second shift at the gas station. It was always like this. Work, work, work. But she was used to it. As Olivia was setting the last cup on a table near the window, she noticed a boy standing just outside the diner's door. He couldn't have been older than 8. He was soaked to the bone, his clothes clinging to him as if they weighed more than he could carry. His feet were bare, his shoes nowhere to be seen. Olivia's heart sank as she watched the boy stand there, hesitant, unsure whether to come in or not. The cold rain seemed to press against him, the air thick with discomfort. Without thinking, twice Olivia rushed over to the door. The bell jingled weakly as she swung it open. "Hey, kiddo," she called out, her voice warm and welcoming. "Where are your shoes?" She knelt down in front of him, her brow furrowing with concern. The boy shrugged, embarrassed, his eyes darting nervously to the floor. "Lost them," he mumbled. "Wasn't fast enough when they locked the shelter doors." Olivia's throat tightened as she listened to him, and her heart broke for the boy. She looked down at her own shoes, worn but still holding together. Without hesitation, she untied them. She didn't even think about the fact that these were her only pair. She just knew this boy needed them more than she did. Right there in the middle of her shift, with customers sitting at the counter, Olivia knelt down and slid her sneakers off. She held them out to the boy, smiling as she helped him slip them on. "Not brand new," she said with a soft laugh, "but they'll get you where you need to go." The boy's eyes widened in surprise, and then a grin broke out on his face, lighting up his entire expression. It was like Christmas morning to him. This simple, unexpected act of kindness was more than he could have ever imagined. Olivia felt a warm rush in her chest as she watched his face light up. It wasn't just about the shoes. It was about the hope they represented. As she handed him a bag with leftover sandwiches from earlier in the day, she gave him a quick hug. "Stay warm, all right?" she said gently, her voice soft. The boy nodded, still smiling, before he turned and walked back into the rain, his shoes now protecting him from the cold and the wet ground. As Olivia stood there, barefoot behind the counter, a strange feeling washed over her. It was as if she had done something more than just give away her shoes. She had given the boy something intangible, dignity, warmth, the sense that someone cared, and that meant more than anything. Meanwhile, at the corner booth by the window, a man sat quietly with his coffee. His name was Andrew Foster, and he was the CEO of Stride Footwear, a company known for its quality athletic shoes. He had been watching the entire exchange between Olivia and the boy. Andrew was no stranger to the fast-paced, cutthroat world of business. He had everything most people dream of: money, power, influence. But as he watched Olivia give away her only pair of shoes without a second thought, he felt something stir inside him. Something real. Something that had been missing from his life for a long time. He wasn't here for business, nor was he looking for an opportunity. Andrew had been coming to this diner for weeks, trying to find some sense of connection with the world outside his office. But today, what he saw in Olivia wasn't just a waitress, it was a spirit. A kind of goodness that had no agenda, no expectations, and no camera to capture it. Just pure kindness. Andrew couldn't help but be struck by the fact that Olivia, who had so little, was willing to give what little she had to help someone in need. As he sat there, a decision began to form in his mind. Olivia Matthews wasn't just any waitress. She was exactly the kind of person his company, and maybe even his own life, desperately needed. She had no idea, but her life was about to change, and it was all because of a single act of selflessness. The rain continued to pour outside, but inside the diner, Olivia's world seemed to slow down. She was still barefoot, the cold linoleum floor biting at her feet, but she didn't mind. Her heart was full from helping the boy, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had done something truly meaningful. There were no cameras, no applause, just a simple act of kindness. But that small gesture would turn out to be more significant than she could ever have imagined. As Olivia busied herself with wiping down the counter and taking orders, her mind kept wandering back to the boy. She wondered where he'd go now, where he'd sleep, if his situation would ever get better. But as much as she wished she could do more, Olivia knew her limits. She had given him her shoes, and that was all she could give. It was a moment of grace, one that she hoped would make a difference in his life, even if just for a little while. She didn't notice at first when Andrew Foster, the CEO of Stride Footwear, stood up from his booth. His coffee cup was empty, and his quiet presence had gone largely unnoticed by the other customers. But Olivia couldn't help but catch a glimpse of him as he made his way toward the counter. She hadn't thought much of him before. He was just another man in a suit who seemed out of place in the small, cozy diner. But now, as he stood before her, she felt a strange tension in the air. His eyes weren't the usual cold corporate gaze that she had seen from many businessmen over the years. No, Andrew's eyes held something else, something thoughtful, something intense. "You gave away your shoes," he said, his voice soft, yet steady. Olivia blinked, momentarily surprised. She hadn't expected anyone to bring up the act. After all, it had been just another small thing in her life, something she didn't think twice about. But here was this stranger, standing before her, acknowledging it. She smiled awkwardly, her hands still wiping down the counter. "Well, the kid needed them more than I did," she said, shrugging. "Besides, shoes can be replaced." She felt her cheeks warm slightly, embarrassed that someone had noticed her little act of kindness. "Some days," she added quietly, "hope is harder to find than shoes." Andrew studied her for a long moment, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Olivia couldn't quite read him, but she felt the weight of his gaze on her. He wasn't judging her, at least not in the way she expected. Instead, there was something in his eyes that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt before, like he understood her. After a few seconds, Andrew reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek business card. He placed it gently on the counter in front of her. "This is my card," he said, his voice low. "I'm Andrew Foster, CEO of Stride Footwear." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. She didn't recognize the name at first, but then it clicked. Stride Footwear was a well-known brand, one that she had heard of many times. They sold high-quality shoes, the kind of shoes she had dreamed of owning. And now, here was the CEO standing in front of her, offering her a business card. Olivia opened her mouth, unsure of what to say. She didn't expect this at all. A big-name CEO, here, in her diner? She was just a waitress, a girl from a small town trying to make ends meet. Why would someone like him want to talk to her? But before she could speak, Andrew placed a folded letter on the counter beside the card. "There's something I'd like to offer you," he said quietly. "Please come to this address tomorrow at noon. Bring nothing but yourself." Olivia stared at the letter, her heart racing. What was going on? Why was he asking her to meet him? And what could he possibly want from a waitress like her? She tried to make sense of it, but all she could feel was a sense of unease and excitement, mixed together. Why was she being singled out? What was going to happen next? "But I'm just a waitress," she said almost to herself. "Why would you want me to come?" Andrew gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Because, Olivia," he said gently, "you're exactly the kind of person our world needs more of. You give without thinking about what you'll get in return. That's rare, and I believe in giving people like you the opportunity to do something extraordinary." He looked at her for a moment longer, as if waiting for her to understand before he nodded his head and turned to leave. As he walked out of the diner, Olivia felt a strange mix of emotions. She was still barefoot, still trying to process what had just happened. She looked down at the business card and the letter in her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. The rain kept falling outside, but inside the diner, Olivia stood frozen. Everything felt surreal. Had she really just been offered something by the CEO of Stride Footwear? Was this some kind of joke? No, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt real. Olivia looked down at the card again. She didn't know what would happen when she went to that meeting tomorrow, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life was about to change. How, or in what way, she couldn't say. But the kindness she had shown that rainy afternoon had caught someone's attention, and for the first time in a long time she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. And so, with a heart full of questions and a mind racing with possibilities, Olivia prepared herself for whatever was to come. Tomorrow her life might just take a new direction, and she couldn't help but feel a spark of hope that, maybe, just maybe, things were about to get a little brighter. The next day, Olivia found herself standing outside a tall glass building in downtown. The structure seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky, its modern, polished exterior standing in stark contrast to the small diner where she had spent most of her life. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the business card and the letter Andrew Foster had given her. The words on the card were simple, but the weight of them felt like a heavy burden. She had never imagined she'd be standing here, in front of a corporate headquarters, about to meet the CEO of one of the biggest shoe companies in the world. She glanced down at her outfit. Faded jeans and a hoodie that belonged to her younger brother Ethan. No makeup, no polished shoes, just the raw version of herself. Olivia felt out of place. Who was she to walk into this shiny world? She wasn't important, not like the people she imagined worked in buildings like this. But she pushed her doubts aside and took a deep breath. If there was one thing she had learned in her life, it was to keep moving forward, even when things didn't make sense. Olivia stepped through the revolving doors, and as soon as she entered, the cool air-conditioned atmosphere enveloped her. The receptionist gave her a polite but distant smile as she announced that she had an appointment with Andrew Foster. A few moments later, she was led to an elevator and escorted to the top floor. The door opened to a sleek, modern office space. It was quiet, peaceful, with walls lined with glass windows offering a stunning view of the city below. Olivia barely had time to take in the surroundings before she was greeted by Andrew himself. He wasn't surrounded by assistants or staff, just him. His warm smile put her at ease, even though she still felt a little out of place. "Olivia," he said, offering her a hand. "It's good to see you. Please come in." She stepped into the room, feeling a little awkward. There was no grand ceremony, no high expectations. It felt oddly comfortable, considering where she was. The room had 2 chairs set up in front of a simple desk. A folder sat neatly in the middle, waiting for her. Andrew gestured to the chairs. "Have a seat, please." As she sat down, she couldn't help but notice how calm he was, how different he seemed from the CEOs she had seen on TV or in the magazines. Distant, cold, unreachable. But Andrew wasn't like that. There was something genuine in his demeanor, something that made Olivia feel like she wasn't just another person in a long line of business meetings. She was important, for reasons she didn't yet understand. He leaned forward slightly, folding his hands together. Olivia, I've been thinking about you ever since we met yesterday. I saw something in you, something rare. You gave away your only pair of shoes without a second thought, and in doing so, you gave that boy more than just shoes. You gave him hope. And I believe you have the ability to do much more than that. Olivia blinked, unsure of what to say. Her mind raced. She couldn't believe she was having this conversation. But I'm just a waitress, she replied quietly. I don't know anything about business or running a company. All I did was what felt right in the moment. Andrew smiled, his eyes softening. That's exactly why you're here. We're not looking for someone with business experience. We're looking for someone with a heart for others. Someone who can see beyond the numbers, beyond the profits. Someone who believes in making a real difference. He slid the folder toward her. Inside this folder is an offer, he continued. I want to offer you a full-time position with Stride Footwear. Not in our marketing department or sales, but in our community outreach program. I want you to help lead initiatives that get shoes to children in need. Children like the boy you helped yesterday. Olivia's mouth went dry. She stared at the folder, her mind trying to process the words. A job offer? A full-time position with a salary? She had never dreamed of anything like this. She was just a waitress. How could she possibly be qualified for something so important? But Andrew's words resonated with her. He wasn't asking her to change who she was. He was asking her to bring her heart to work, to use her genuine kindness and compassion to help others. She had always believed in helping those who had less, and now, here was an opportunity to turn that belief into something bigger than herself. I don't know what to say, Olivia whispered, her voice trembling. This is so much. I don't even know if I'm the right person for this job. Andrew placed a hand on the folder, his expression calm and understanding. Olivia, you're exactly the right person. You've shown me that you have what it takes to make a real difference. You don't need experience. You need a heart that's willing to give just as you did yesterday, and that's something you already have. She sat back in the chair, stunned. Her heart raced as she took in what he was saying. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a chance to change the lives of others, just like she had done for that boy. It was a chance to do something meaningful with her life, to have an impact beyond the diner, beyond her small world. We'll provide you with everything you need, Andrew continued. A salary that will allow you to focus on this work. Health benefits, even a scholarship for your brother's education. We want you to succeed, Olivia. We believe in you. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at him. She had always dreamed of something more, something bigger than herself. But she never thought it would come this way. All she had ever done was give what little she had, and now, it seemed that the universe was offering her something in return. Olivia wiped her eyes quickly, trying to regain her composure. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you so much. Andrew smiled warmly. This is just the beginning, Olivia. A new chapter in your life. I believe you're going to do incredible things. As she signed the papers and felt the weight of the offer settle into her hands, Olivia knew her life was about to change. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a woman with a mission, someone who could make a real difference in the world. And it all started with a simple, selfless act. As she left the building, a feeling of hope blossomed inside her. She had taken a step toward something bigger than herself, something that would shape her future in ways she couldn't yet understand. And for the first time in a long time, Olivia felt that maybe, just maybe, her life had a purpose beyond what she had imagined. Months had passed since Olivia stepped into that towering office building, her life forever changed by a single act of kindness. Every day felt like a new beginning, a fresh start that was far beyond anything she could have ever imagined. Working with Andrew Foster at Stride Footwear was nothing short of transformative. What began as a simple offer, a chance to help children in need, had blossomed into a full-time position that gave her a purpose she had never known before. The work was challenging, but it was the kind of challenge that filled her with excitement. Olivia had been tasked with leading initiatives to bring shoes and dignity to children who had never known what it was like to have a pair of new shoes. She traveled from city to city, working with local schools, shelters, and organizations to set up shoe drives and community outreach programs. Everywhere she went, she saw the same thing: children who were desperate for a little bit of hope, and she had the privilege of giving them that hope, one pair of shoes at a time. She had never imagined herself in a role like this. She had never imagined being the one to change lives. But here she was, standing in front of a group of excited children in a school gym, watching them laugh and try on brand new shoes they never thought they could afford. Olivia felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. The joy on their faces, the gratitude in their eyes. It was more than worth any long hours, any struggle. Stride Foundation, giving strength one step at a time, read the banner behind her, and it couldn't have been more fitting. Olivia knew that this work wasn't just about shoes. It was about restoring dignity to those who had none. It was about showing people that someone cared, that their struggles were seen, and that they deserved more than what life had given them. For Olivia, this was the heart of the mission, the heart of what she was doing. When she wasn't on the road, Olivia worked side by side with Andrew and his team at Stride, brainstorming new ways to expand their outreach. Andrew's leadership had taught her so much, but it wasn't just his business acumen that inspired her. It was his belief in people, the way he could see potential in others even when they couldn't see it in themselves. Andrew believed in Olivia, and because of that belief, she began to believe in herself. One day, while Olivia was organizing a new shoe drive at a local community center, she received a letter from her brother Ethan's school. The letter informed her that Ethan had been awarded a scholarship, not just for his academic achievements, but for his perseverance and hard work, despite the challenges he faced. Olivia could hardly believe it. The scholarship was a lifeline for her brother, a chance for him to receive an education that would open doors for his future. She realized that all the sacrifices she had made, all the nights she stayed up late, working to pay bills and buy school supplies, had led to this moment. It was a gift, not just for her, but for Ethan as well. The next morning, Olivia went to work with a renewed sense of gratitude. As she sat in her office going through the stack of papers in front of her, she thought about how far she had come. She was no longer the young woman who had given away her shoes to a homeless child. No, she was someone else now. Someone who had built a life piece by piece through hard work, determination, and a willingness to give. Her transformation wasn't just about her job or her career. It was about the way she saw the world now. She had learned that kindness, no matter how small it may seem, could create ripples that spread far beyond what one person could ever imagine. Her act of giving had not only changed the boy's life, but it had also transformed hers. It had opened doors, created opportunities, and connected her to a community of people who shared her values. Andrew had always told her that the smallest acts of kindness could change lives. Olivia finally understood what he meant. It wasn't just about the big moments or the grand gestures. Sometimes it was the quiet, everyday acts of love and care that made the biggest difference. When Olivia had given away her shoes, she hadn't expected anything in return. But life, in its own way, had returned to her tenfold. She had found a new purpose, a new mission, and the opportunity to make a difference on a larger scale than she had ever dreamed. Months later, Olivia stood in Stride's headquarters, gazing at a simple glass case in the lobby. Inside the case were her old worn-out sneakers, the very ones she had given away to that boy all those months ago. There was a plaque underneath the shoes that read, "True strength isn't built in factories. It's built in hearts willing to give without expecting anything back." Olivia smiled softly as she read the words. She knew they were true. Her strength, her resilience had never come from the material things she had. It had come from her heart, and that was what had carried her through everything. As she walked out of the building, Olivia's heart felt full. She had come so far. She had transformed from a young woman struggling to make ends meet into a director of community outreach, helping children all over the country find hope and dignity. She had built a new life, one that was driven by purpose, kindness, and the desire to make the world a better place. Olivia knew that her story wasn't over yet. There was still so much to do, so many more lives to touch, so much more kindness to give. But she also knew that no matter where her journey took her, she would always remember the lesson she had learned. Sometimes, the smallest acts of love can leave the biggest footprints on the world.